And we're back with another Patreon upload. So this one is on a film that was suggested by a buddy of mine, Ian J. did, on Facebook, and he suggested the film Congo from 1995. I remember I'd seen about half of it. I'd come in about halfway through the film, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't really get the appeal. It's not a great movie. I think what they were trying to do was create another Jurassic Park, because I think that Michael Crichton also wrote the book that this was based on. As far as I'm aware, the film has almost nothing to do with the book. It's very, very different. I was supposed to be on this episode. I was unavailable. I had to work. I was working on a TV show down in Virginia, so I had to dip out on this one. But Seth jumped in with a couple other people, and it was overall a pretty good episode. They go in depth into how the film is different from the book and why the movie ultimately just doesn't work. I tried rewatching it before we did the episode. I think it took me like 2 sittings to get through it because I just said it's horribly boring. It's really, really dull. It's unfortunate. It's a great stacked cast. You got Tim Curry in there. You got Ernie Hudson, Laura Linney. Like great cast. And it's incredibly boring. So I think that they were trying to make it seem more like a Jurassic Park, because it was so popular at the time, and it just didn't work. So this kind of comes on the wave of a bunch of Michael Crichton novels being adapted back in the 90s. There was Jurassic Park, there was this, and Sphere came out not long after this. And so you just had this wave of films based on his work, and that's fine. The only one I think that was really successful, however, was Jurassic Park, and that film is drastically different from its source material. It's almost nothing like the book, and now it's its own franchise. It's completely divorced from the books. So changing source material can sometimes be a good thing. I think the film is better than the book, but in this case, maybe sticking to the book would probably be a better option. So here it is. Here is the Patreon edit of our film rescue of Congo. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Film Rescue Show. We're lending a hypothetical hand to the feature films of Hollywood. We're trying to fix their mistakes in retrospect. I'm trying out a new intro this time, as it is season 5, and I'm getting tired of the same verbose thing that I do every time. We've got a different lineup for you today. Not the normal hosting, but maybe the best hosting. From the Recorded Tomorrow podcast, we have Jesse Ferguson. Hello, from the West Coast.
Hello. This is not the Jesse
we
you're
also
looking for.
have new Montresor Media editor Byron, also a guest of the show and all-around wonderful person. Thank you for jumping on.
Hello.
You're also a West Coaster.
That's right.
Damn, you guys and your lack of
Represent.
snow right now. For the
Hey, we had all the snow
for
last
the
week.
guest today, we have a newcomer to the show who is bringing us just a classic. I'm very excited to jump into this one. Ian, you are new to the show. However, you're not new to, I think, movie criticism and writing in general, as you're an author of Tripping the Field and Migration. Thank you for jumping on the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, two books out right now, and I'm doing a video series of my own, and that's kind of my latest project. And yeah, that's I'm a Michael Crichton fan, which is what we're getting into today. So I am thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Glad you jumped on. Today we are discussing Congo, directed by Frank Marshall, the first man of Star Wars, I want to call him, because I think for a time he was married to Kennedy, right?
George Lucas.
Was he married to Kathleen Kennedy? Is that right?
Sorry.
I think he is or was. I don't know. I think is. To my knowledge, they have not separated.
Okay. All right.
This film, it has kind of always been on my radar. It was actually my first watch on this one. However, I'm curious as to the opinions of the rest of the panel. I will say we try to start the show on positives. That way we don't cuss right off the bat. if you were to compliment this movie, let's start with Byron. What did you enjoy most about watching Congo, and have you seen it before?
I saw it for the first time a few weeks ago, just by chance. And I like a lot of parts of this movie. You've got a really cool laser effect. You've got pretty good Stan Winston. Yeah, it's great. You got pretty good Stan Winston makeup for. Oh, I forget the ape's name, but
Amy.
It's like a full bodysuit.
Amy, yes.
Amy.
That looks really good, and I love the performances of Ernie Hudson and oh god, I can never remember his name. Long John Silver.
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry, that's
Curry.
it.
Yeah, there we go.
Tim Curry.
And there's enough of all of those things in the movie where I was never unhappy.
This sounds like Bruce Campbell erasure to me, so I need you to take a back seat for a second.
Oh, was he in this movie?
In the first 5 minutes.
For like 5 minutes.
He was Charles. He was the cameo at the front.
Jesse, how about you? Have you seen it before, and what did you like about this movie?
I have. I actually also am or was a really big Michael Crichton fan, and I saw this in the theater actually way back in the day. Haven't seen it since, but I remembered really enjoying it in a like campy, good bad way, and it definitely lives up to that. I agree. The creature effects are great. There are a lot of just over the top, ridiculous elements that kind of work, at least on paper. There's some execution issues, but we can get to that later. But yeah, I really like the creature effects. I really like that it sort of leaned into the camp. You kind of know what you're getting into when you see Bruce Campbell's mug right at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, seriously.
I wish he was in more of it, but he's great where he's at. I was
Positives.
What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. I think the special effects were really good for 1995. Obviously, we can do very much better than that now. I thought that they found a creative way to solve the problem of how do we illustrate a gorilla doing sign language in a movie in 1995.
The pitch for this movie is Ozarks meets Muppet Treasure Island meets the Nintendo Power Glove.
Yeah, I like it.
Not saying that's good or bad.
Good.
I'm just saying that's kind of what it is.
It is what it is.
Ian, you picked the film,
Fairly
and
accurate.
From our previous chats, I gather you're not a super fan, but mostly because you enjoy the book more. If you had to point out things about the movie that you enjoyed, though, what would you pick?
That's not tough at all. And I hated the movie more when I first saw it because I loved Michael Crichton and I did read the books. I had read I was lucky enough to read most of his books before I saw the movies. That happened with Jurassic Park, and like Jesse said, I also saw Congo for the first time in the theater. But again, the problem was, I had read the book, and I just read the book fairly recently, and I was so excited. And I was like, oh, Bruce Campbell! Oh, you guys got Bruce Campbell in this. It sounds like you got Stan Winston on some of the special effects. I was very excited. So I was very disappointed at first, like really angry at the film. But then I just watched it again last night, and I put everything in retrospect. I'm like, it's not terrible. I mean, it's not great. It's boring is my biggest problem. We'll get into that. But, like some of you other guys said, the special effects were really... I really thought they weren't going to hold up. And then when I saw some of the animatronics that they did on Amy, and then even like the evil gorillas, that you get at the end, they did some really great things. And the volcano exploding, all the set design that they did, it was pretty good. And I would say from reading the book and being a fan of the book, really the casting really wasn't too bad either. I don't think they made the best use of them. Well, again, I'm trying to stay positive. Sorry, I'm trying to stay positive here. But yeah, I mean, the people that they chose to portray the people, Laura Linney, and I don't remember the main guy's name. Yeah, and who
Laura
played
Linney's
Dr. Elliot, the main kind of, the guy who was working with Amy. And some of the characters were not bad choices. So I'm like, you guys would have, I can see it. I'm like, as a director, I'm like, I would have gone with some of those same choices. So that's probably the best, you're going to hear out of me out of that. Like, fine. I'm fine with your casting and, not bad special effects. So yeah, I think that's the main things there.
Totally. Yeah. I think for me, this was my first watch, as I said at the top. My expectations were Jurassic Park ripoff. Leaving the film, it was maybe more Jurassic Park 3 than Jurassic Park 1.
Right, right.
Up to and including a plane crash that happens at about the halfway mark of the movie. The weird parallels that I was seeing. But yeah, overall, this cast is kind of insane. I think almost all of the main actors went on to do amazing things or had already done amazing things. I mentioned Laura Linney is like killing it in Ozark. Dylan Walsh, I think he's in Nip Tuck, right? Didn't he go on to do...
Yes, that's what it was. Nip Tuck. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah, not up my alley, but
one.
I mean, he's getting work is, I guess, the point. Ernie Hudson, Tim Curry, Bruce Campbell, Delaway... I want to say his last name correctly because I've heard it said before. He was...
I know who you mean.
Yes, he was Killer Croc in the Suicide Squad movie.
Nice.
He's done a bunch of like kind of background, but still like big work. He was Curse in Thor: The Dark World, which no one but me remembers. The point being, the cast is kind of crazy good.
He played Killer Croc in the Suicide Squad. That was him.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Oh, I had no idea. I didn't know who that was. That's interesting. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
He's kind of like the go-to guy. If you can't afford Idris Elba, you get him.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. He's great too. Was he on Oz?
Yeah.
Or Jaimin
in
Hansu.
Oz? Remember the show on HBO about the prison? Wasn't he in Oz?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do know what you're talking about, and yes, he was.
I think that was him. I think he was like one of the main characters. If I'm not, and now I'm putting it all together. Okay, all right.
He also.
I'm just happy that we got a Delroy
Wonderful,
Lindo
right?
cameo. That made me happy.
Not for very. I feel like. I'm very curious what the background of this movie, like the making of this movie, was like. It feels more interesting than what we actually got.
What you saw.
Yeah, and maybe that's the segue into the negatives. Presentationally, this movie should function. However. If I had one big complaint, Karen just produces a laser at the end of the movie, right? Did I read that incorrectly? It just appears.
Yeah. Sure.
No, well, I mean,
they set it up.
Charles
they did set it up from the beginning. That's what Bruce Campbell's got he's got a laser at the beginning too. He shows that he's got the equipment now that these diamonds are whatever magic. They never really explain, but all right, they make lasers. Sure.
He even did tell you that we can only do it in short bursts like this because we don't have a whole diamond. But if we had a whole diamond, this would be amazing.
As you're saying that, I think the first 5 minutes of this movie feels so disconnected from the rest of it that I just kind of forgot that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then, no, I'll forgive that one. She doesn't just produce a laser. It just is embedded into the story and forgotten about for an hour and a half.
Right. The whole time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Got it.
My biggest issue with this movie is that there are... It's one of those movies where there are so many things going on, and at the same time there is so little happening.
Absolutely. It does make sense.
If that makes sense. And you have two completely redundant plot lines and sets of motivations. We could have we don't need Tim Curry and Joe Don Baker. They're both both need to get to that rainforest, and they both need to find the diamonds. They just need him for slightly different reasons, but they're not antagonistic. It's just it feels like it just feels like we needed an excuse to have Tim Curry
I mean,
eating the scenery.
Yeah, that's a character they invented too. He's not in the book. There's not that character in the book. They just made him up I don't know for
and he
for comic
doesn't
relief
need
or
to
something.
be.
I don't know what they were thinking exactly, but yeah.
I mean,
Tim Curry was
Sure.
pretty bankable at that point. They were probably hoping that people would flock to see the movie because it had a talking gorilla and Tim Curry. Maybe they were like, well, he was great in, the last Muppet movie he was
also,
in. This is
I
just
want to
gonna be
touch on
more
the
of
talking
that.
gorilla thing. That was overhyped to the point that I thought it was like a speaking gorilla. Like they find sentient gorillas like the Flash in this. It's not that. Maybe I'm mad because when I was a kid, my uncle, who was deaf, he was a professor at Gallaudet University in D.C., which is a deaf college, and he was linked to the San Francisco team that was working with Coco the gorilla with ASL. So I got to meet Coco the gorilla as a kid, and Coco said I was funny or funny looking. They weren't sure which one she meant. To this day, it is like the thing my family makes fun of me for. I'm either funny or funny looking. There's a reason I do podcasts and not videos. Put it that way. But yeah, that was like a sticking point for me. I was like, no, gorillas can do sign language. We just don't have a power glove that speaks for them. That was
right.
That was it. That's my tangent. I'm done.
Well, and to possibly break into a little bit of Ian's territory here, I also read the book, and in the book, Amy was just a gorilla, and she just spoke sign language.
There's no power glove,
and you had Dr. Elliot just sort of translating for her, but you would get subtitles, and I say subtitles, you would get her translations, and she was eloquent. Like she had conversations. She was at points like she was flippant and dismissive and like sarcastic.
Yeah, there's a full range of emotions.
She felt like
full
a
range
character.
Of emotions, totally.
Right. Whereas in this in the movie, she feels
also,
like a prop.
She is, because there's no reason in the movie. Like it's like the movie said, "Oh, so this book had a talking gorilla." It's like no one ever went into the book to find out. But there's a reason that there's a talking gorilla in this story. Like there, and that's what part of what you were talking about is that the whole flow that you feel it's all discombobulated. And I don't understand why they did that either. Like the book makes it clear from the very beginning. There's a reason why everyone is going on this mission. They are all really kind of on the same page. And they all do have slightly different motivations, absolutely, and they all got personality conflicts. But there's never a question of what they're doing, what their motive, and it's a race against time on top of it. They're being chased. There's other people looking for these diamonds, yada yada. It's not for laser. There's nothing about lasers in this. I mean, it's all about telecommunications, but these are worth like billions of dollars. And so there's this race that's going on top of it. The monkey is like, the talking gorilla. It is so integral to the story, and they're just like, in the movie, you're like, okay, ultimately, what purpose did it really serve? Like, it's like, why was she there in the movie? Like, really? Like, they didn't figure that out. So, the book solved all of that. The book, there was a reason for everybody there.
You could have picked Amy up and just lifted her out of the entire movie, and it would not have really affected the movie at all, which is tragic.
The whole thing is tragic, because the book is so...
Especially since they framed the whole, like, everything around this movie, like the marketing and everything was framed around Amy, and she just doesn't
There's
matter.
no point.
Let me cut.
Sure.
Let me cut to Byron real quick for his negatives. Anything you didn't dislike, Byron, in this, or you did dislike? I'm sorry, in this film.
What? No. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that gets in the way because I enjoyed the movie for what it is, but because I came at this from the trailer first when I was a kid, and I saw, what I saw was aliens crossed with anaconda.
Oh.
And that's what I want.
Okay.
And then I heard that wasn't it.
Okay.
And I didn't know there was a book, so I just, I forgot about it until recently. So if you're going to make this movie like this, then it's way too complicated for that. So first off, you got to get rid of that first scene that tells you exactly what happened in the jungle. That goes away.
Yeah.
You have the G-Men show up at, Amy's place, and they see the drawings of the icons or whichever, or landmarks, something like that. He gets invited.
Wait, are we already in pitch
this
territory?
is just how I would change it to make it functional as a film. Sorry, and then
okay.
Basically restructure it to be like Aliens and the Mummy, like go full adventure, not a half character piece, half adventure movie.
Yeah, the adventure parts didn't quite feel
adventurous.
Yeah.
Adventurous. There's nothing about any of the movie that feels suspenseful. I mean, there are scenes and you're just like, man, it's like they just shot these scenes so matter-of-factly, and you're like, okay, well, they just got attacked by hippos. And it's just like, okay, moving on. And there's no, even when, there's porters that die throughout the movie too, and they say nothing about it. Like, oh God, that guy's dead. It's like, there's nothing.
Right.
Like, well, whatever. Like,
yeah.
we're just moving on. It's so odd. And there's nothing. There's no beats.
It felt like they were trying to illustrate how dangerous the jungle was, because they had like the scene with the snake coming up and doing that, but they kept crippling those scenes and just making them not matter, because like you said, we have the snake coming in, and then the porter just kills it with a swing, and then we have the hippo attack, but there's no consequence to that. Nobody dies in the hippo attack. I don't think they even lost a boat in the hippo attack. It just
to illustrate the difference, not to keep bringing up Jurassic Park, but hey, Crichton, this is your legacy. In Jurassic Park 2, there's a scene where we take a break from the movie to watch one of the bad guys get eaten by copies. It's this whole, like, he's going to go pee, and his buddy's listening to music on headphones, and that's why you can't hear him scream. And this all just illustrates how dangerous the island is now. In Congo, we have a scene where they're on top of a mountain and trying to pick if they want to go left or right, instead of showing us one of the porters dying.
Yeah, right.
Like, the scene on top of the mountain where they're, like, it looks like, people who are climbing a mountain. It is accurate looking, but it doesn't add anything to the plot. It doesn't further any characters. It's just this, they show a shot of the mountain, it cuts to them camping on the mountain, they pick left or right, which doesn't mean fuck all to the audience, right? Like, I'm not familiar with this part of Africa. I don't know what left and right mean here, guys. So they take this, 3-minute chunk to show us that, instead of 3 minutes of absolute horror of a porter being killed in Africa.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know, again, you don't even really know why everyone's really going there. Because Karen Ross, Laura Linney, they never really explain. She's so secretive, like, well, who knows why I'm going out there? There's all this mystery around it. And so you never really know, like, why? Why do you need to, like, why? What is so important? There's just like, well, there's diamonds, there's sort of that possibility, or a lost city, but there's not really a real, I don't know, you never feel a push of, like, it's like a lazy, like, well, we're going camping.
Right.
That's how it seemed to be.
I mean, she was going to find Bruce Campbell.
That was her motivation.
Was her motivation.
Yes, yeah, that's her. Yeah.
Under the guise of finding the diamonds for her boss, who is her, and like, he was just mustache twirlingly evil for reasons that made no sense. He's just like he's greed personified. Yeah, Joe Don Baker,
and he's another person they invented. He's not in the book. In the book, it's all Karen Ross. She's the one who is who's ruthless, who is like, she's very intelligent, but she is 100% like, I want these diamonds, I want this money, this is going to be billions of dollars, we're going to be ahead of the technology industry and the communications industry for like years to come. And she is absolutely like, I don't care about you, I don't care about that monkey. And of course they had to make it so personal, like, oh, she's there. She's angry that she's got to go, and she's mad at at the boss being such an evil guy, and it's like, in the book, it's like she's 100% she's almost the villain. Almost, not quite. She's almost the villain. Like, and even by the end, like, she makes terrible choices that, like, disrupt all sorts of things. I mean, through the whole book, she's like, just like, I don't care. And she tells people throughout the book, like, you really don't matter to me, by the way. Like, I'm just letting you know. Like, and they make it clear she's so cold and just like whatever. But yeah, she's out looking for her boyfriend in the movie. You're like, okay, all right.
Also, did you notice that she had to be they had to make her former CIA so that she
Right.
could be good at stuff?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Instead of just,
Right.
being a competent
it's
person.
Like, what's this? A woman who's competent? Why ever would that happen? Yeah, totally. Yeah, all the reasoning. Yeah, it's just so strange. And man, I think their biggest problem that I kept coming across was like I said, there's no suspense. I even paid attention to the music. Even during the scenes that are supposed to be exciting, there's not really this, like you'd hear in Jurassic Park, that memorable music, that the drum beats, and it's like they had no idea how to even build any kind of excitement. It's like, again, you're just watching these scene after scene play out, like, all right, that just happened, and no information. There's no narrative. I think that's what kills everything. There's a whole lore behind these evil. They're not even supposed to be gorillas. That's another thing. That's like, the book makes it clear this is a whole other species. This is not even, that they're finding out there.
Right.
And it's such a brutal book. Like, the way there's these deaths that they are finding. There's this whole trail of bodies that are like showing up throughout the book, right? And these gorillas, they kill people in a very specific way. They were trained to kill people with these giant stone paddles that were basically like cymbals. So what they do is come up behind people with these enormous stone paddles. I used to call them the monkey paddles. It was so funny. And they would just they were so strong, they could just smash people's skulls in. So they were finding these people along the way, like their skulls are like smashed into like hamburger. Like, and their eye. They're pancakes, and their eyes are popping out. And they kind of like refer to that a little bit at the beginning of the movie, like the eyeball falls onto Bruce Campbell. And he's like, whoa!
Right.
Like, but that's about the only thing they mention along there. But there's this super fun thing that these gorillas are using these tools to like kill any intruders into this mine that they've been protecting for, thousands of years, because they were trained to. It's and they just of course it had to be PG-13. This had to be a family adventure, right? So,
yeah, that's
what are you gonna
that's
do?
another weird thing about like my interactions with this movie before seeing it. This was always pitched to me as a horror movie.
Oh, it should have been. And so was Jurassic Park. Even the book Jurassic Park. It is a bloody, like, Jurassic Park doesn't pull punches. The book we're talking about. I mean, it is like, John Hammond, the old Santa Claus, dearly old man. Like, he is a bad man in that book. Like, he is an evil strategist who doesn't even really care about his grandkids, and he is killed at the end by dinosaurs. Like, and rightly so. It's like, and I feel. It is gruesomely, and I feel like that about so many Crichton's books. Like, this is kind of a horror novel, a very intelligent, scientifically accurate horror novel, but this is horror, and you guys forgot that,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I often tell people the movies we're about to do on the show. When I was talking to someone, they said that this movie with raptors is the Jurassic Park we should have got instead of Jurassic Park 3.
Totally. I like that idea.
Yeah, I wanted to throw it out to you guys to see how that landed, because I don't know if I agree, because would that require a talking raptor that's a good guy?
Right?
No, because as we've already established, Amy is completely unnecessary
True.
to this movie.
Byron, what do you
I think I think it would...
Byron, what do you
go ahead,
think?
Byron.
This movie with raptors, worse or better?
I think it would miss kind of the core concept. Because reading about it, Crichton wanted to do a modern version of King Solomon's Mines.
Okay, that makes sense.
And if you just swap out, the monsters for a different kind of monsters that don't have anything to do with overzealous greed is punished severely. You got to keep the greed aspect, or to me, it's just a name. And I don't know how I'd be able to tie raptors into going deep into the forest for greedy reasons.
Well, I would like to point out that there is a brand of flat earthers and religious people that think there are still dinosaurs in Africa. I wish I was making that up. I really wish I was, but I'm not. So take that as you will.
So Congo, Skull Island?
Basically.
Yeah, let's go.
Nice.
Nice. I didn't know you meant legit, like totally realistically, like actually trading off of raptors. I thought you meant that metaphorically in terms of the horror. So I might change my answer. Like, yeah, I'm not sure that's such a good idea. Like, to literally change it out with raptors. Like, the idea, the threat in the book of these gorillas, they made it legitimately scary. They made even the hippos scary in the book because they gave you some narrative. Like, that was, hippos, a hippo attack. It's funny because he goes through the actual trouble in the book to explain, by the way, hippos, they're not just like lazy, docile water cows. These things are dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, these things, you do not want to get a hippo pissed off at you, especially if it's on land. They move very fast, and they will destroy you. When they fight, they don't fight like gorillas do. Like, and he goes through the whole thing again and again. Gorillas are the most gentle creatures on the planet. They're more gentle than even the chimpanzees that we think are all cute. Gorillas are the nice guys, really. So that's why he's always making these stark contrasts. Like, by the way, all of your assumptions are totally wrong. And when the hippo attack happens in the book, he has gone through a lot of explanation of really like, this could mean your death. These things, the jaws will clamp down on you with so many, foot-pounds per square inch, like you're dead, like they're terrible. But in the movie, again, it's one of those things like, well, there's hippos,
Right.
and oh no, we're being attacked by giant water cows, and well, luckily we made out of that situation, and let's move on to the next part.
Do you know?
So
go ahead, Jesse.
Just a sidebar, and Seth, you can cut this out later, but there is a book series. I believe the first book was called River of Teeth, and it's an alternate Western series where instead of horses being cultivated and domesticated in the Old West, it was hippos, and it's pretty fascinating.
How very strange.
It's
I love
it's
that
worth a read.
idea.
I enjoyed it.
It's only just because of how absurd it sounds, but then it feels like it's possible also.
Well, the idea was that somebody brought some hippos over to domesticate, not knowing how dangerous they were, hoping that they could you just kind of breed them for meat, and because they're smart and resilient and strong and deadly as hell and fast, they just kind of took over the whole ecosystem.
That's happening in South America right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
With what?
So Pablo Escobar bought hippos.
Oh, with hippos.
Pablo
Okay, I thought you meant another breed of something.
No,
else,
like
another species.
with
Okay.
hippos.
With
So
hippos.
No.
Okay.
He
All right.
he bought hippos, and then when he was raided, they didn't know what to do, so they just released them, and now there's like hippos in the Amazon that aren't supposed to be there.
Oh no.
This is
How
the actual
strange.
plot of the movie. Oh no,
Right,
these
exactly.
creatures are here. What do we do?
Yep.
Basically,
Wow, that we got a movie there. We got a new future
dude,
movie. Yeah, all right.
I'm not saying that if you're going to do Hungry Hippos as a horror movie, that's the way to do it, but I don't know. I would pay to
Right,
see
but-
that movie.
If you've got if you're gonna go in a direction, that's what you start with. Then reviewers would be like, I don't understand what happened. This is actually a good movie. I don't know what happened. I was
Shockingly,
at the edge of my seat. I didn't know if it was going to get that other marble or not, but it's amazing.
shockingly, the sequel to Battleship was actually good, is what it sounds like you're saying.
Right, exactly. Like, what? How did that happen?
Like they spit the marbles out to crush people.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's the.
The way to
They're learning to use tools.
the way to introduce the marbles is it's some kind of like Aztec decoration, and then a hippo bites one, and that's it. That's the poster. You're done. Like, go home. Everything's completed.
It's the Jaws poster, but a hippo going after a marble.
Yes.
Oh Jesus!
I'm
And
sorry for that.
And they make the same. They keep
All
making
right.
the same mistake. Was the point I was making about the hippos, that they do that about with the the fine these crazy crazed gray gorillas at the end, that again he goes through all of the narrative of explaining why these things are so dangerous and why they're so intelligent, and they have a language, they're intelligent. And of course in the book, that's why Amy is integral to the story, that she's there, she's able to start communicating with them, and they start being able to translate a little bit about what these gorillas are saying to each other. And there's she has a purpose there, and so they're able to use her to like kind of be a liaison to this other species. And again in the movie you're just like, well, she's there. It's like, for what?
That is infinitely more interesting than what we got in the movie. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yeah. Right.
Oh yeah.
There's all this translations that they do with these computers they have, and it's also interesting because the book takes place in like 1979, and so their technology. Yeah, it's a weird thing. He kind of backed up a bit and did a little bit of a. And it wasn't written in 79. I think this book was written more like in the maybe late 80s or early 90s or so, as I recall. I could be wrong about that. But there's all this background to that. And so many directors make that mistake. With 60 seconds, you could have just, gave us a little bit of a narrative as, hey, by the way, why are these things frightening? Why are these things so scary? What's going on with them that is so terrifying? And they never really explain that. And I see that happen always, and I'm not going to try to jump off the topic too much, but remember the first Avengers movie? Is it the first one where they get attacked at Wakanda by that? Or no, that's not the first Avengers movie, but the first Infinity Wars.
War. Yep.
You're talking about
Infinity War when the aliens land outside the dome that they've got protecting Wakanda. Remember, and they release these vicious, these like 4-legged, 6-legged animals. Right. Do you remember? You know what I'm talking about? There's nothing. There's no explanation. Like, I swear, with just 60 seconds of someone going, by the way, what we've got in there is just horrifying. We found these things on planet whatever, and we've starved them for a month, and these things are vicious apex predators and the worst. Give me a story. Tell me, by the way, what are these things? What are they? And then release them. And oh my God, how much better would that scene have been? Like, oh God, these guys are in trouble. They've just released these horrifying, whatever. But they do the same thing in so many movies like Congo, or like, well, there's some crazy gorillas. You better look out.
Incidentally, Congo was actually published in 1980.
No kidding. So. It was actually his grip on the technology is amazing.
It was contemporary.
That is
for him,
amazing then, because the technology, they're still dealing with outdated technology in the book, but that is interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
It really seemed like he was coming from a perspective of 20 years down the road is really what it looked like. So that's shocking, really. That makes the book even more interesting to me.
As you're making this point, I'm realizing I know what this movie's missing. It needs a himbo. It needs a big dumb guy character for people to explain why everything is happening, so that the audience can then be like subjected to the terror. Like, because imagine the scene of like, I don't know, let's throw somebody on the bus. Army Hammer is the backpack guy for the movie, and people have to go, yeah, there's hippos up ahead. And he's like, hippos are just water cows. And then someone goes, oh, no, you don't understand. And then they lay out the horror for us. So then when the scene happens, we go, oh, shit, this is terrifying.
And the thing is, they had that. They had Peter Elliott was the guy who's the really kind of the fish out of the water, who really seemed like he had not been in the jungle before. They had that guy. They could have done that. They didn't need somebody. They could have just brought in someone stupid to go, okay, boss, what's going on now? Like, well,
it
Lenny.
didn't have to be somebody. It didn't have to be somebody stupid. Right. And this kind of actually ties into when we get into pitch territory. But if you had just combined like Tim Curry and Joe Don Baker into a single character. And had him come along on the expedition as well, and he's a ruthless business person, so he maybe doesn't know all of the naturalistic he's not a biologist, he's not a naturalist, he doesn't know anything about the jungle. He would be the person making those stupid those stupid
as long
comments.
As the information gets
also
across.
if we can put Philip Seymour Hoffman in that role.
Yes,
right,
greenlit, like 100% greenlit.
Oh, he's so good. He was so good. Yes.
Imagine Philip Seymour Hoffman being like, hippos, those are just water cows, right?
Yes, 1,000 times yes. I'm on board. Yeah, it's not often where we get to talk about a movie where I genuinely kind of enjoyed the experience. I have a question I want to lay out to the three of you. If you had to rate the absurdity of each act, Act 1, 2, and 3, Act 1 being the setup to get to Africa, Act 2 being in Africa and the horror scenes that didn't happen quite right, and then Act 3 being attacked by silver gorillas and lava and hot air balloon and lasers, how would you rate the absurdity across these three acts? Because I feel like the movie doesn't tell you how absurd it's going to get. And that is the biggest twist, is like, oh no, we're just going to get crazy, guys. Just strap in.
We're willing to go there.
You're exactly right. We're at like, the first act is like a 2, right. And then the second act is maybe a 4, and then it jumps up to like an 8.5.
Yeah.
In the third act.
How about you, Byron? What was your experience for the absurdity?
I think the first act was actually pretty absurd because the scientist has a demonstrable, like, very easily packaged technology to communicate with animals that he has to ask for funding, I think is beyond belief.
Even the audience calls him Dr. Dolittle. I was like, is the movie razzing itself? What is happening here?
Yeah, so that one's a little more like maybe a 4. But, it's the first act, it's throwaway. And then the second act, it's also pretty fine. There's instability in Africa. I don't think this film handled it the best, because everyone's like, it's fine, get in the truck.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do with that,
Yeah.
What I'm really upset with is that it stopped being a factor in the second act. Like, imagine if they're going through the jungle and occasionally there are just bombs going off and gunfire, and maybe that's why the hippos are extra spooked, and like everything is now worse because of the tension in the country.
Which is totally a factor. It's a factor through the whole book of like all these political problems. They're dealing with this constantly. So yes, absolutely.
Nice.
Totally.
Right. And I'm not a geologist, so I don't know if there's any basis to this, but what if all of the bombs going off are making the volcano unstable, and that's why we actually get the eruption at the end?
So you've actually touched on the book. There is actually a final reason why the final eruption takes place, and it's all Karen Ross's fault. She sets off seismic charges to get her idea is that she's going to get a better accurate representation of how many diamonds are in this mine. So she sets off these series of small charges, and the idea is that it triggers the last final explosion of, she's like I said, she's like basically a bad guy through the book. She's not out for anybody's, well-being. So so you're onto something.
Do you think that's why they added the Tim Curry character and the Joe Don Baker character, is that they wanted a female protagonist front, so they had to remove the antagonistic aspects and put them into another character?
Totally. Yeah, I think they turned it so that her boss was more the bad guy, that, Tim Curry was more the greedy one. Like, they took all of her greed and they put it into Tim Curry. And, they wanted a nice, they wanted a female in the movie that was more of, where they weren't spitting on, basically. Yeah. And they've done that in Jurassic Park, too. I mean, in Jurassic Park, there's 2 kids, right? The girl in Jurassic Park is generally just a crying, whining pain in the ass for the most part in Jurassic Park. And she really doesn't she's just there to be saved. And the boy is the computer genius. The boy is the one who's always going, I know everything about dinosaurs and I can fix this situation. And the girl's just like freaking out and crying the whole time. And, of course, in the movie, they're like, well, we can't do that. We got to, and I get it. There's good reasons to that. They, hey, women need to be represented better and all that. But, sometimes they do that and just not always the most casual
I think that's a good point. There's good versions of redoing characters for representation, and then there's stripping everything away from Laura Linney so that she has to just act her ass off against Tim Curry, which is the Olympics of acting, may I point out. being
Yeah.
like,
This is
there's
true.
a reason Tim Curry's a human character in Muppet Treasure Island, and then the rest are Muppets.
Right? You don't need.
I will say one further positive that this just brought up. I was happy to see that Laura Linney and Dylan Walsh didn't end up romantically
Yes.
entangled at the end.
That was nice. That was nice.
That seems like the cliched thing to do. Have them just, fall in love over the course of this, and then kiss for no reason at the very end when Amy was
Like,
walking
agree.
away.
Totally
But
agree.
I'm glad they
Totally
didn't do
agree.
that.
Totally. Yeah.
What were you
and
saying?
they make it clear again in the book that they're not friends. Like, Dr. Elliot, the guy with Amy, he really does not like
Yeah.
her. Like, he's just like she's such an awful person. So, yeah, I'm glad they didn't do that too.
What were you saying,
In
Byron?
terms of the characters, I wonder if part of the reason they stripped all the bad stuff off of her is because, like, the supporting cast is entirely gray. Like, you've got,
Oh, yeah.
the mercenary who's just down for whatever. You've got strange non-Soviet spy over there. You've got this corrupt dude, and in general, I think, in the books, everything's all mixed up. Everything's gray because they're like real people.
Yeah.
But at least in the 90s in film, it's like, well, we need two good guys.
Well,
Otherwise, nobody will like this. And it's like, no, I want to see garbage people go into the jungle and get wrecked. That's what I want.
the plot of Anaconda, basically.
And if it was done today, I think if they darkened it up and grittied it up today, like with a new edition, they could do all of that and people would love it. Like, it's fine. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Let her be ruthless, and let her. It's not that she doesn't serve a purpose. I mean, she saves them too. I mean, she's a very resourceful person. It's not like she's in
Yeah.
Twice.
many times. I mean, she's really useful in the book and in the movie as well. But it's like, again, like you're saying, yeah, they need these two-dimensional characters. Like, she good guy, he bad guy. Like, okay, great.
Well, I think they could have done, like, they could have gotten away with making her a just a cold, calculating bitch if she was not the only woman in the entire
right,
goddamn
exactly.
movie.
Right. Yeah, you can't have your only female just be like, we're gonna just, like I said, you can't just be stepping on the only female, and that doesn't work. Come on,
Guys, this sounds like Amy Erasure, and let me express, she used a power glove to make herself part of the movie.
You're right. I'm
true,
sorry.
that's true.
I take
She
it
was-
back. I apologize to Amy. I'll rephrase. If she had not been the only human woman
Thank you.
in the entire movie.
Also, I think Amy should have
You're
been
welcome.
subtitled. What do you guys think about that? That she should just have been subtitled. There is no power glove in the book. Why not just, like, I don't know. Like, it just seemed like a more natural thing to do instead of having this constant Amy good girl. It's like, all right, that's
I'll do you one.
Yeah.
I'll do you one better.
I agree.
Because I'm all for ASL representation in films and stuff. I am personally hard of hearing, mostly my fault from going to concerts without hearing protection. Like, I did this to me, but I am genuinely hard of hearing at this point. And so I often go to the subtitled versions of movies if that's an option. And that's never been weird to me because, again, I would often go to movies with my uncle who was deaf and would pick,
Sure.
I've never seen a Toy Story in theaters that didn't have subtitles, and let me tell you, that helps. It really does. I retain more with them. I am a big advocate for subtitles.
Sure.
In this case, I would have enjoyed subtitles with, like, gorilla ASL emojis. The double of, like, so the audience can quickly pick up on, like, good Amy. Like, she says that within the movie a bunch of times. Good's a very easy sign.
Right.
You take your flat hand away from your chin, that is good. That's like a very easy thing. And people could pick up on those easy ideas pretty quickly. And I think putting, like, little gorilla emojis into the movie would make it more obvious when you see these signs happening. And by the end of the movie, your audience would know easily 5 to 6 new signs in ASL.
right. Yeah, sure.
The only problem with that is that I think that let me rephrase that. The only issue I have with that, because I had thought the same thing, except that I don't think that Amy's costume, I don't think that the actor portraying Amy had enough finger dexterity to actually sign.
Well, and that's an issue with gorillas in general, is they, like, the human ASL vocabulary is very much based on dexterity, which is also, not to get like too specific, a big issue for amputees who are deaf, which is like a thing people don't often think about. And I'm not saying it's like no one's shitty for not thinking of it, but it is a thing I've run into where it's like, oh yeah, that would be a fucking problem, wouldn't it? For that reason, they tend to teach gorillas the non-dexterity based signs, like open hand, close hand, or spread fingers, close fingers. Those are kind of like the most specific they get with signs, and then it's just motions from there. And again, I'm like saying all this just from like anecdotal experience from what I've learned in passing. They may have made huge jumps and leaps since then that I don't know about. That could totally be a thing. If you are that listener, please send me links, because I would love to learn. But in general, they do tend to make it easier for gorillas. Therefore, I think the issue is just the suit actor not knowing ASL and was just being directed on set was the point of all that.
Right.
And for that reason, I think it makes the emojis easier to replicate on screen, because you can learn ASL from a book. Like they have tightened it to that point where like some intricacies you have to learn in conversation, but that's kind of the same with any language. Like you can't what's the Duolingo your way into speaking perfect Spanish. You have to like actually talk to somebody who speaks Spanish to learn it. Does that make sense? Like that nuance?
Right.
Yeah.
That's all.
You know, I you know what they were doing? They were marketing this, trying to get the kids, involved on some level. They gave her a child's voice, and which was a huge, that was a huge decision in and of itself, that she was speaking in a little girl's voice, and they kind of took away, just how much of a powerful, they remind you throughout the book, like, this is still a gorilla. This is a very powerful, vicious animal who can, really mess you up if it wants to. And they kind of touch on that a little bit at the end, where she kind of gets nasty a little bit with the bad gorillas. But I don't know. I think they thought they were going to sell toys.
If I remember correctly, if I remember correctly, they gave Crichton describes her as dangerous the way a heavy piece of machinery is dangerous, not by disposition, but by dint of sheer size and strength.
I like that.
Absolutely.
I like that.
But don't you think that they thought they were going to sell Amy toys? Like, they're like, oh, we're going to make a bundle off of, like, some little Amy gorilla toys, and all the kids are going to want one, and we're going to make $1 billion or something. I don't know. That's kind of how it seemed. Like, look, we're going to, package this, and it's going to be awesome.
I think they saw the success of Jurassic Park, like 2 or 3 years earlier?
Yeah.
Totally. And they saw that it was rated R material brought down to PG-13 that was really successful because of how popular it was with kids. So I think that was it. The way I would handle the subtitling is, I'd have the actor do the signs, and then you still leave the dialogue in place for her handler to interpret it, so that you can see the difference between what she says and what he understands. And then still have the voice for people who maybe are hard of seeing, perhaps.
Sure.
So you have 3 layers of information to kind of communicate the same thing. And then you could have fun stuff where she says, like, we need to be really careful. I think there's some hippos in the river. And then the guy says, let's be careful, or, translates part of it, so you know that they're a different person. If she only had the signs or didn't have a voice, I would feel like the limited interaction she has with the other human characters would be walled off even further, because she could only communicate through her handler.
I like that idea, because it could lead to like a funny moment of misinterpretation from like her saying something maybe with a little nuance in sign language, it being interpreted very like bluntly, and then the subtitles telling us what the like non-nuanced information is, and then you have to from the scene go, oh, this is a case of, not interpreting things the correct way.
Right.
What I would like to see in a situation like that is have her, to your point, have her say something that is nuanced or potentially like snarky and have the doctor sanitize it and have her be like, I don't trust this bitch, and then have him say to Ross, be like, oh, she doesn't like your sweater or something like that, and then have Amy just like dagger eye glare at Elliot, like, that's not what I said.
Totally, and that happens in the book constantly. All of those interactions that is happening left and right, where he can't really translate it, some of the things directly, and she knows it because the idea is she can understand the speech, but she can't, she just can't speak.
Right.
So she always knows, and she does that where she looks at him like, that's not what I said. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. And no, I don't like that woman. She's an ugly woman. I hate her. And he's like, oh, and he's like, oh no, she just like was commenting on your whatever. Right. Totally. That happens left and right.
Yeah.
So, that would have made so much more. That would have been more fun. You would have had more, at least more interaction. There's like, then she's not just this like stupid child basically that's just going, good gorilla.
Right. No, I 100% agree. I mean, you have to suspend the realism of, like, actual gorillas don't speak in full sentences in that way. But it's a movie, so I'm fine with that. And if it comes at the price of, instead I get these hilarious and or suspenseful situations because of it, that is a price I'm more than willing to pay. Like, I'm not going to go to that movie and go, well, gorillas don't actually speak full sentences, therefore this movie's dumb, because I'm not an incel YouTuber, so, like, I know how to watch movies with suspension of disbelief.
Right.
I want to point out two quick little things that I got from my research before we go to the break. First of all, did you know John Carpenter was the first person tapped to do this movie?
Oh man!
Interesting. I didn't know that. Oh, that would have been. I'd like to see that version.
It was.
That's what it needs. I would love to see the rated R version of this. I would love to see somebody make this dark. Again, don't make it dumb. Like, it doesn't need to be just a dumb horror film. Make it intelligent, but make it dark. Like, Event Horizon kind of thing. Like, this is terrible. Like, this is a terrible thing going on.
Right.
Here.
Also, I love that you brought that movie up because I unabashedly love it, and everyone shits on me for it. So, Event Horizon,
it's so ridiculous and dark. I love it.
Yeah,
it's like Hellraiser in space. It's awesome.
The other one is a point for Byron. If we're keeping points on a scoreboard, you brought up King Solomon's Mines.
Yes.
Did you know initially Crichton decided to write the screenplay for Sean Connery, who played Alan Quartermain in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Wait, say that again?
Let me back up for a second. So the Ernie Hudson character, Captain Monroe, is a stand-in for Alan Quartermain. It's a character swap out.
Got it.
And initially, the reason Crichton signed on to do the screenplay was because he thought Sean Connery would make a great Alan Quartermain. And then, 6 years later, he would play Alan Quartermain in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That's right. How interesting. Oh, that would have been
nice.
I would have liked to seen Sean Connery, bring a little bit more gravity. That's what we need, maybe a little bit more gravity to this, because the character of Monroe is kind of like he's such this swashbuckling sort of charming fellow, that Ernie Hudson turns him into, which is fine. I love Ernie Hudson, but it's like that character is like he's like an arms dealer. This guy's a mercenary. This guy has been like he's got blood on his hands. Like, he's a dark character. There's no doubt about it.
One of my favorite moments in the movie is they run into the Silverback for the first time, and Elliot stands still and looks down, and then he looks back and he's run away.
Everybody's
and
gone.
Everybody's run.
He goes, "Where'd you go?" And he goes, "I ran away. I'm sorry." And that's the end of the conversation.
That is a good scene. And what sucks is that they do try to throw in humor in the movie, and 90% of it just falls flat. And it's like you can almost hear in the background just going quack quack quack. Like, God, like that was a joke. I got it. But that was I liked it. That was cute. That was a cute part.
And that movie in the like advanced R-rated version of this actually might make the movie more accessible. I know the MPAA can be like really stupid about stuff, and if you make jokes in a horror movie, it gets you a lower rating. So I don't know, maybe that's the way through. Yeah, like accessibility is part of the way they grade things, and a fully dark version of a movie versus a dark version of a movie with a bunch of jokes, they'll greenlight the second version every time.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. All right.
Yeah.
I had some problems selling my first book to some, well, not problems, but some people wanted to do some things like that with my first book. They're like, you've got too much going on here with drug use and discussion of religion, and some of your violence is like pretty intense. Like, none of this, we don't like the way this is matching. We want to make this a little bit more accessible, to a larger audience. That was my first taste of that. And I'm like, yeah, interesting. And no, so we're not going to do that. No, this is supposed to be kind of gross in some parts. That's what you need.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What are you going to do?
I mean, yeah, stay true to the vision, I guess, is the point totally. Here. And I appreciate you bringing that up, too, because that is a very good point of, if that is your artistic vision. The thing this movie is lacking, this is the big negative. I don't think there's an artistic vision. There is a let's make money vision.
Yes, that's how it felt.
That makes sense.
And while that is a great metaphor for the intent of what I've gathered the book is, which is just unabashed greed,
sure,
that doesn't translate in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he paints such a terrible story in the book of just like how terrible greed is, like what we've done to the planet. I mean, it's one of those things you're like, oh my God, we're doomed.
Yeah. Any closing final thoughts before we go to a break and jump into the pitch?
I don't think so.
I'm good. Yay! Yeah. We've got so much.
Well then, here we go. If you would like to check out Ian's work, you could. There will be links down in the description because I do follow through on that. I don't know who all reads the descriptions, but I do put effort into typing out a unique description every time. You can check out his last two books, Tripping the Field and Migration. Tripping the Field is a occult sci-fi adventure through shamanism and shape-shifting and quantum physics. Bro.
I know. It's got everything in there. And it's kind of a horror book, too. It's one of those things where, like, you can read it as a horror, you can read it as an adventure, and, man, it's so many things mixed together. It doesn't fit into a nice, neat genre. Barnes & Noble said, how about occult fiction? And I said, actually, that works, because there's a lot of religious spirituality mixed in with shamanism, but then it's all kind of explained in a Michael Crichton-esque kind of way, like, yeah, but there's a quantum physics explanation behind all of it kind of stuff. So, yeah, it kind of jumps in through a lot of genres.
It sounds like you're trying to get a Netflix deal, because whatever this is, I would read it, but I'd also watch it.
So that's the plan. I've got a producer. I can't really talk about it. I've got a producer looking at it, and I made it very clear. I said, if this book is carried out, it's an epic book. The book is almost 500 pages long, and there's nowhere. I thought about cutting it into 2 books. I didn't. And I've got somebody looking at it, and I said, man, if I had my druthers, if I had my greatest wish, you do this as a 7-part series on, say, Netflix or something like that, and we can go as dark as we need to. Like, we're going to not cut any corners. Like, there's going to be blood. There's going to be gore. We're going to do some practical effects. There's creatures. There's monsters. There's shape-shifting. It needs to be brutal. And we need to not... there's a lot of drug use in it, too. I'm like, we can't dance around that. So... I've not heard from them since. There goes my artistic integrity.
It sounds like the kind of thing that needs to run across the right person to go, oh, we can sell all of that. Because, again, I'm going to give this the, oh, hell yeah, Seth approval of, I would watch that.
Yeah, it reads like a movie script in many ways, because I'm a movie freak. First and foremost, before I was a writer, I love film. So, like, when I wrote it, I'm like, how would I lay this out in a film, just blow by blow? And that's how I wrote it. So everyone who reads it's like, I can see this as a movie. How is this not a movie? I'm like, well, I just need $100 million. If you can just lend that to me, we'll make that happen.
We'll get A24 on the horn.
Right.
Would you? Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And then one of our guest hosts today, Jesse Ferguson, is the co-host of the Recorded Tomorrow podcast, which is...
This is true.
Just, I mean, every time I think you guys can't do more, you do more, and that's what I appreciate about you. The general breakdown is the writing potential of time travel in storytelling in any medium. It sounds like at this, because you guys have done books, you've done movies, you've done ARGs, right? Or things that turned into ARGs. I think you did. I might have to go back through and send you a DM, but
that might be a future episode that I haven't written yet.
Nice.
But yeah, that's essentially Recorded Tomorrow is a show where my co-host Jonathan and I break down the rules and pitfalls of time travel stories. We kind of act like as a writing tool for authors who want to tell good time travel stories, as some things to watch out for, things to avoid, and certain bases that you have to make sure you have covered.
And it's
Jesse, you and I are going to have a longer conversation about this. That's awesome. That's I really like that as a topic. You can make a whole turns out you can make a whole show about it. That's awesome.
Ian, same boat. The first time I talked to Jesse, I was like, "Oh, we're gonna have a lot more conversations, aren't we?"
Every time I have such strong opinions about anytime they do or time travel. I'm like, did you guys think this through at all? Like, come on. I don't know. There's so many good ways to do it, and the physics. I study physics too. I had to study physics to write my first book, so the physics behind the way time works in general. That's so fascinating, and man, that could be brought in.
Buddy.
Oh, that's awesome! So your show sounds awesome, man, and that sounds really exciting.
I'm working on an episode right now that I'm hoping to have published here really soon.
Yeah.
There's been a whole bunch of life events getting in the way. It's about a month behind, but I actually sat down with. I don't know if you know who Spiros Michalakis is, but he's a quantum physicist and a film science consultant.
Oh, okay.
He consulted with he consulted on Bill and Ted 3 and on Avengers Endgame and on Ant-Man. He's done a lot of Marvel stuff.
I have heard of this guy. I didn't recognize the name. I know you're talking about though. Cool, very cool.
Yeah. So we got to talk to him. He came on as a guest when we talked about Bill and Ted 3, and then we had such a good time that we brought him back, and there's going to be a 2-part interview of just us chatting with him. The first episode, like the first part, is just about his life and how he got to where he is and stuff like that. And then the second half just really dips into a lot of the let's talk about time travel as it pertains to the nature of time and from a quantum physics standpoint. So that's a fun one.
Yeah, my geek hairs are standing on end right now.
And then let me lastly before the break throw to Byron, who is the new YouTube editor for Montresor Media, doing the Lord's work over there. Anything you want to plug, Byron?
Yeah, you can find my work on the Mummy 2019 episode of the Film Rescue Show, where I launched 3 fixes. Do I still hold the record on that?
As of right now, yes. Total number of fixes for one guest. That is the record.
In one show?
In one show, yes.
Nice.
So that's my current claim to fame, but I also write role-playing game adventures for the Alien system and other systems. So I'll put those links in there when I get them.
Hell yeah. Byron is just the coolest, easiest to talk to person that I've ever met. And I am so happy to put all of our YouTube editing into their capable hands because, boy, if I didn't want to do that work.
Oh, yeah.
Let's throw to a break real quick. When we come back, Ian is going to fix Congo 1995. Hello, it's me, your Pitchmaster General. I'm going to be trying something new here in the future, and today is me kind of cluing you into what that's going to be. I want to do free ad rolls for artists, Twitch streamers, YouTubers, and podcasters, and anything in between in this segment. you need to reach out to montresormedia@gmail.com or me directly on Twitter @SethXDecker. Just shoot me a message and let me know that you would like to record your own 30-second to 1-minute shout-out segment. And I'm just going to start a rolling Rolodex of these things in the middle of the show here. I'm going to be calling this, and now a word from our friends, instead of, and now a word from our sponsors. And I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's a cool idea. I'm really into the idea of cross-promotion. I'm very interested to see how this goes. I think I might be running a little bit long, so back to Congo. Welcome back to the show. I'm joined by Jesse the Ferg Ferguson.
Hello.
Byron the Uncle Kulikov. Is that your Discord name? Is there a joke in there?
Yeah. That's a character from Notes of a Sniper, or Enemy at the Gates.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time. That's maybe the universe telling me I should watch it.
I haven't seen either of those.
Enemy at the Gates that's Jude Law, right? That's the sniper movie?
Jude Law. Yeah, Jude Law. Yeah.
Ed Harris.
Oh, yeah, Ed Harris. That's right.
The king himself.
Is that Uncle Kulikov? Is Ed Harris?
No, it's Ron Perlman as a supporting character.
Yep. And we're also blessed by the presence of author Ian. Is it Jaded? Is that your last name?
It's just Jaded, just how it looks. Yeah, Jaded. Yep, that's just what you're seeing. Jaydid. Jaded.
I got to interview John Bogdanov, the writer of Steel from the DC Comics last year, and
cool.
Nice.
let me tell you, I thought it was Bogdanov. Like, I had the emphasis on the wrong parts of his last name, and I've never been more embarrassed in my fucking life. I always try hard to get people's names right. Anyways.
I've done that. You guys know what Coast to Coast AM
Yeah.
is? The paranormal show? Yeah, I was on that like about a year ago or so, and I honestly forgot which. There's two Georges who have been like hosting that show who are like really. They're both fairly popular, and they both have a name for themselves in that field. And I kept calling him during the breaks the wrong name, and he's like, "You know who you're talking to, right?" I'm like, "Oh no!" It's just terrible.
Oh, that
I played Ted, dude.
the secondhand embarrassment is real. Let's pivot quickly into the pitch. Ian, you're going to pitch us the better movie version of Congo.
Oh,
I'm ready for it. It is as
not
of right
hard.
now.
Yeah.
As of right now, it is your show. So,
Okay.
how would you fix this movie?
So, this is not that complicated, and I just wish someone had read the book. I really don't see a whole lot of reasons to stray from what they've done in the book. I think the biggest problem, besides that we're dealing with possibly a director, I don't really remember much about Frank Marshall. Besides the biggest problem that I see, that as a movie, they didn't know how to do anything with suspense. They don't know how to build suspense. They don't know how to intrigue you about what's going on. And the book, of course, handles all of that from the very beginning. Like I said, the biggest thing is that they are focused. This is a focused story. Everyone is on this mission for a reason. Everyone knows exactly why they are going into the jungle, and so you feel that there is a purpose. You're with them, and when you have, it's such a big problem in movies where you don't really understand everyone's motivations. It's hard to be on board. You can't go, man, I hope they make it. I mean, you don't have really any sense of that in the movie of like, gosh, I hope they get to their destination. I hope this all works out, because there's nothing, you don't really understand all the pieces. They are building the pieces for you. Well, they build the mission for you from the beginning. There's a reason Amy is going into the Congo. Now, Amy and Peter, they've got their own reasons. He's bringing her back. She's been having nightmares about her past. Amy has a deep connection to this part of the jungle that they're going in, and it fits into the story deeply. Amy's mother, it turns out, has been murdered by these vicious gorilla creatures, is all you can call them, because they're not gorillas. They're actually a whole other species, right? And we find this out later that, Amy has been having nightmares from the past, and Peter has kind of figured out where she was possibly brought from. So there's all this momentum that they're all on the same page, and they are going to look for diamonds, not to build laser guns or anything. It's truly, so this is a technology company. They are chasing billions of dollars. I mean, it's kind of like they're saying, this is like the next whatever. We're going to be the next Google, the biggest thing ever. And we are, if we succeed on this mission, we are we're all funded. All of our projects are funded for the rest of our lives. There's so much money at stake. So they're all on the same page. Bring them all on the same page. Build some suspense. Make sure you've got the reason why Amy is there. Explain, why is she there? Why is she important to this story? Why is it important that they've brought this gorilla into this situation? And in the book, what they should have done in the movie is that give us, they're feeding you these little pieces throughout the book of like, by the way, these aren't gorillas that have been killing these people, and they keep finding, like I said, there's these bodies that are being sprinkled, more and more for you. There's this trail of bloody breadcrumbs that they're following right through the book all along. Like, it's getting worse and worse as they go. Like, oh my God, like what we're possibly up against. These things are terrible. Like, we are, there's real danger ahead. And yes, there's also a volcano brewing on top of it, which causes problems. So, they keep feeding this to you along the way, where it's like the stakes are getting higher and higher, and you feel none of that. There's none of that in the movie. And I'm not sure we need to rate it R, but it really does help that there's this lore. Part of what it makes the book fascinating is they go into why these dangerous gorillas are the way they are. They are this whole species that they do, finally realize through hieroglyphics and all this kind of stuff that they retrieve at the site, that this was a diamond mine. Yes, it has been a diamond mine forever, for thousands of years back. And this city they've gone into is actually a giant, it was a training facility, because what they did is that they did train this species of gorillas, whatever they are. Again, they're not really gorillas, but this new species, they trained them to be the guards of the diamond mine. So they were trained from a young age to use, like I said, these giant stone paddles to murder anyone who intruded into this territory. And it was just this is what they were taught to do. It was simply a matter of, and then they went through the whole explanation, and then they taught their children, and then their children's children, and 2,000 years later, whatever, they're still, just mindlessly, and they explain, like, by the way, this species is actually fairly calm for the most part. Like, during the day, they find them during the day. They're just like this other species of gorilla that are hanging out, but then they're like, well, now it's back to work, smashing people's skulls in who get near our diamonds, and it's just fascinating. Again, you've got a reason for Amy to be there. She starts communicating with them. She gets them out of a bunch of jams. She's their liaison. She's what saves their ass. And everyone is so much more three-dimensional. Again, Karen Ross, she's not just this, oh, darn it, capitalism. I'm so angry at capitalism. There's none of that in the book. She is like just 100% like she makes a lot of bad mistakes, a lot of bad decisions.
So
that's just to get the money.
Would you make her the straight up antagonist again if you were?
No, we don't need to make her a bad guy. You've got bad guys. You've got danger. I think it's okay to let these people be ambiguous. It's okay. We're so afraid to not let people be ambiguous. Like, she is who she is, and again, she's not played off as the villain in the book, but she's not really a good guy either. She is, sometimes her actions happen to help, and sometimes they don't. And let all these people be gritty, three-dimensional. I think the movie should be dark. I think this should be much darker. I mean, this is kind of dark material, and maybe perhaps make the whole idea of these gorillas that they're finally facing at the end, this should kind of more play out like a horror movie, but they don't really do that. I feel like the directors didn't know how to do that, or they were so intent on making this a PG-13 family adventure that everyone can watch, and there's only a couple scenes of, ew, that was really gross. I mean, this should be dark. Like, no, this is brutal stuff here. I mean, there's like people being murdered in the most grotesque way, and I think they should have kept all of that. Give everybody a reason, make it intense, make it suspenseful, make everybody's reasons for doing everything, for being there, tie that up at the end, and you've got a movie. It was in the book. So there's my 15 cents on them. You got more than 2 cents.
So I love the ideas at work here. I'm curious, when you say make it darker, so darker tends to have this like, and we were talking about this during the break, this like Nolan-esque kind of spin to it, where darker just means realism. Is there a way to keep maybe the camp of the movie while still making it more horrifying, and also you get like, because I'm on the same page. I tend to agree that PG-13 cut to R is always worse than just the straight up R version, versus punching a PG-13 movie up to R always tends to make it very silly.
Yes, yeah. I think that I think that you can get rid of the camp, but you don't have to get rid of the fun. That's the thing. There's nothing. I don't find this movie particularly fun the way they have it, and I think that there's natural places for humor in the movie, like we had talked about that moment with Ernie Hudson of just like, how they deal with all of the frights and whatnot in their own different ways. There could have still been those moments, and we have seen that. We're seeing that more and more in film. Like, no one's afraid to go dark now. Like, the blood and gore and whatnot is like totally fine. We've got our Deadpools and whatnot where we're like, it's really graphic and, intense and gross and whatnot, but then, we're laughing about it. I mean, I'm not saying it should be handled like Deadpool, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying you can do both. You can have this, dirty it up a bit. Don't have these two-dimensional cardboard cutout people. Try to make them more like real people, and I think you'd be more invested in the film. Tim Curry, I love Tim Curry, but yeah, he's such a clowning character. It's like it's hard to take any of this seriously.
Right.
So I think you need to cut out some of that camp, and then make it intense to the point where when there is actually a bit of real humor, it's actually funny. Like, it's actually like, that's actually a good joke.
Well, because the humor is often the release in a horror film, right? Like,
Right.
your best horror
Right.
movies, even if not unintentionally, have that moment of like, oh fuck, I can laugh and relax for a second. Like, I want to point out the movie Midsummer. I love that movie. I think it's like excellent cinema. However, there's no laugh to make me go, okay, I can relax for a second.
Yeah, it's just dead serious through the whole thing. You just feel nothing but foreboding for that whole movie. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, if the entire experience is just continual ratcheting up of the tension without any periodic release, then it's going to turn audiences off every time.
Yeah.
And sometimes that, like, artistically can be important. Same
Sure.
director. Think about Hereditary. Like, the middle of the movie is not even how fucking intense the movie's going to be, and that's on purpose. And
Right.
I also don't revisit that movie often for that reason. Although I still love that movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There are certain movies that I would recommend to almost everybody to see one time, and exactly one time.
Yeah. That's an important list, actually. Dunkirk. Worth watching once.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Saving
right.
Private Ryan, worth watching one time.
Byron and I were just talking about this the other day with Marvel movies. There are some that are like revisitable and some that are like, maybe just one time if you need the story.
Yeah, I've seen Iron Man 2. That's enough. Yeah. And thinking about how to get impact without upping the rating, I had a really good time with Flags of Our Fathers. I don't remember if it was rated R or not, but I remember the way it was filmed and timed and shot was that, I mean, the blood was almost the color of the sand, and so everything was really muted, and there'd be all kinds of incredibly rough stuff in that movie. And I think part of why none of it lands in this movie is because there's zero distance between horrifying thing happening and somebody making a quip. Like, the hippo attacks a boat, and then immediately, before the hippo is even left, somebody makes a fat joke or something. And it's like, good, adventure.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I'd love to see how far Tim Curry could go with, like, something terrible happens, and we just sit there as everyone's staring at each other, and there's just a hole in the boat. And then somebody makes a joke like, my Walkman's burned out from the water, or something.
I like that.
And then it's like, oh, we're okay, I guess, but, we gotta sit there and just kind of stare at each other for a minute.
So let me pivot back to Ian. If you were to redo this movie in 2021, what is the tone you would run for? What would you like to see in like a prescient version of Congo?
Well, the tone, I think it should be. It's definitely an adventure, like you said. Like there is kind of this. We're gonna go kind of to this area that's a lost city. I love that. They should have played that up, the adventure of this. But again, I think that the tone should have been much more. I think you should have gone for much more deadly serious with this. Like it's an as is. Like we're watching these people. You know, I think it should have been re-envisioned of like, look, none of these concepts are that ridiculous. The idea of the talking gorilla, it could have been explained like, look, this is not ridiculous. We have this. And the idea of finding another species in the jungle, like nothing that happens in this movie or in the book, I guess I should say, is just it's really not that completely absurd. They could have sold this as, you know, like, hey, this is happening as it is, and you are watching this, and then, like I said, then you add, you know, the humor comes naturally then from these real characters involved in this situation, you know, and have, you know, a few lighthearted jokes here and there, fine, you know, and make it, you know, we don't want the whole thing doesn't need to be dead serious, but it should be somewhere between more of an Indiana Jones kind of feel. Like you feel like this is a fun adventure. We're exploring this lost civilization, that kind of thing. But then, you know, then you've got this terrible, really threatening, you know, this threat that is, that's something different, something menacing, and it's got to be, I don't know, it's got to be something, you know, all the gorillas that they showed, they do a night scene in the movie where they're all done, they're attacked at the camp at night, and you know, they still don't know how to handle the suspense. It could have been a scene that could have been really horrific if they would have just slowed down, built it up a bit. You know, these creatures are out there. We don't really know what they are, and they're aggressive. We know they're violent, and you know, we've seen what they could do. They don't do any of that. It's like, I don't know why. Again, I don't know if they were just afraid for this to be too intense. I'm not sure. But then the rest of the time you see the gorillas, they're just sort of out in the open, in the light, and they're not, you kind of see them for what they are, and they're not, it's great. They did great work with the makeup and whatnot, but I think today you could make something really legitimately frightening, keep it in the shadows, keep these things in the shadows, you know, and then have a really great creature at the end that you're kind of pulling out a little bit more, you know, do that reveal. But again, you know, I think at that point you're doing more of you know, Planet of the Apes kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, more of the modern day. It's got to look real. It's got to look. You got to believe that those gorillas are 100% real. And I think that actually be a problem. Doing this nowadays, you're going to have to really sell the audience on how is this different from Planet of the Apes? How is this, you know, because we've seen talking monkeys, we've seen intelligent gorillas, we've seen the King Kongs, and they're doing that real well. I think nowadays you've got to sell this on the horror factor is the way I would go. I'm like, yeah, but we haven't made it dark. We haven't made this bloody. You haven't explained to me that this is a grisly adventure. There's going to be real lives at stake. People are going to get killed in horrific ways. And the creature should be the final creature. It shouldn't really be a gorilla. It shouldn't just be like, well, it's a gorilla, but it's gray. They make it clear in the book. This is an unknown species. It is not, and it's not a gorilla. It's not a human. We don't know what it is. It's this whole other thing. And, you know, turn this into more of a monster movie at the end. Again, an intelligent, dark monster movie. And man, I think that people would be like, hell yeah, I want to see another Michael Crichton movie, but make it dirty. You know, I want Michael Crichton, but give it to me dirty.
Right. No, I like what you're
saying. I think there are...
Oh, go ahead, Jesse.
Go ahead. No. You first.
Well, I just... a quick point I like to point out is that Chewbacca is a horror character. No one thinks about that, right? But a guy who tears your arms off because he lost a equivalent of chess game is horrifying. He's basically a sentient gorilla, and that's kind of... You're pitching, like, the horror version of Chewbacca.
Yeah, right.
Which I love. Like, that is a good idea, to be clear.
Yeah, I think I would add there are two or three things, like fundamental changes, that I think if we made, we could improve this movie quite a bit. One, I mean, obviously, like you said, if we change the theme, if we change the focus, if we really try to dial up the suspense as opposed to the spectacle, because if as you said, if we're making this in 2021, realistic looking gorillas have been done multiple times for a decade now. So you can't be coming to see realistic looking gorillas or even gorillas doing sign language because we've already seen that. So you have to really play into the suspense of this. And then just from a structure standpoint, I think we need to pick one of these two motivations for the big nasty corporation to go, or for Karen Ross to go. Like, either we're looking for the lost city of, either we're looking for Solomon's mine, or we're looking for these diamonds as the communication thing and accidentally find the mine that we didn't know was there. Like, there's no reason, as we said before, in the things that are wrong, there's no reason to have both of these motivations to get multiple people to the same place. We can collapse that character down. As much as I love Tim Curry, I don't think that he's right for this new rescue. I mentioned earlier, I'd like to combine his character with Joe Don Baker, and I'd like to recast that character as Philip Seymour Hoffman.
The 2021 version does not require or would be helped by Tim Curry as much as I love Tim Curry.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I guess the 2021 version can't have Philip Seymour Hoffman either. So I don't know who we would put in that place.
Meth Damon. What's his name? I was just tweeting about how great he is.
Did you just say Meth Damon?
Yeah, and I know exactly what actor you're talking about. The guy who did the Black Mirror episode that's like a ripoff of Star Trek.
Jesse Plemons.
Jesse Plemons. Totally.
Okay.
He's called Meth Damon because he was on Breaking Bad, and he looks like Matt Damon. And the meth
that
is
guy
not.
Is fantastic too.
He is the next Philip Seymour Hoffman.
He's phenomenal. That guy is fantastic. He's so scary.
I believe it completely. I like the meth is a reference to Breaking Bad and not a reference to like how he looks, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, he looks a lot like Philip Seymour Hoffman.
And he also does the same roles. He'll switch between like background to sympathetic side character to antagonist. Like he just did the lead in I'm thinking of Ending Things. He's
okay.
Oh, dude, if you need Philip Seymour Hoffman in 2021, he's your man.
Nice. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So we cast Jesse Plemons in that role then. Another Jesse we have to keep track of now.
Yes.
The other thing that we would do is, like I said, we lose the backpack, like the power glove thing. We just have Amy speaking in sign language. We do. Sure. I like the idea of doing having her be subtitled and then also having her handler translate for her, so that we can have those communication mix-ups, or not even mix-ups necessarily, but we see the way that Dr. Elliot filters what she's saying, and we as the audience kind of get an insight into this gorilla and get to know her as a character, because she's not a character in the movie. Like I said, she's a prop, and we totally give her
she's a prop. Yes.
We give her more nuanced dialogue. We make her actually have opinions and have feelings about things and be pissed off at Dr. Elliot for sometimes for when he filters or sanitizes the things that she says or doesn't listen to her in scenarios like that. And then that kind of makes it more meaningful because she can, like you said, in the way that the book goes, she can kind of pick up on the way that the gray gorillas are communicating and start to mimic that and start to talk to them and then act as some kind of a liaison. So those three things, like focus on the suspense, combine the two storylines into one, or just pick a storyline, pick a motivation and deal with it, and then make Amy talk, make Amy just sign, and do it in motion capture the way that we're doing. If this is 2021, we do it Planet of the Apes style and have her just be a person in a mocap suit instead of the admittedly really nice looking creature effects that they had in the original. I like the idea of them piggybacking off of the mission to send her home, and I do think that it makes sense that they would have issues with funding in that scenario where they say, we've taught a gorilla to speak, to communicate in sign language, and now we want to put her back into the wild and see if she can teach other gorillas. I can see a venture capitalist looking at that, or like a research person saying, you have this thing and now you're letting it go, and we're going to have to start over if we want to do this again. No, we're not going to fund this. And then we have the big the telecommunications company step in and say, we can fund this on the condition that Karen Ross gets to go with you because we have our own reason for being there. And then you have that constant bit of antagonism between the two in terms of competing reasons and goals and motivations and wanting to get certain things done versus wanting to get other things done. And it just provides a lot more inherent conflict.
This leads me to two questions for the book specifically, because you two have read it. The first question is she revealed to be antagonistic early in the book, or is that a kind of like twist reveal, like her intentions? Because I could see that in a movie playing off as we don't know why she's here, and then when we find out, we go, oh, that's why you're here.
Well, I think her motivations are clear from the beginning. It seems like they they go into her details, like they even go into a psych profile briefly about just what kind of person she is, and they really don't even deviate that in the book. And she's in the book, she's the one running everything. The only reason that Peter Elliott and Amy are there along with her, again, she brings them along with her because it's her deal from the beginning in the book. She brings them along just because she thinks it's going to be easier to get across borders and whatnot if they're on some sort of ecological mission with this with this primate and whatnot. She's like, you guys are just my pass as an excuse to be out here. Like, hey, we're just returning this gorilla back to the wild, and so you don't need to be worried about what I'm doing there. So they're just. And she makes it clear, like, look, you're just cover. I don't really care what happens to you. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It actually is a pretty good dynamic in the book because, like you said, her motivations are clear the whole time. And she's kind of, I'm going to put to compare these, I would compare their relationship to sort of like Jack Sparrow and Will Turner, where they're both, like, they have similar motivations, and sometimes that aligns them to where like they're on the same team, but sometimes that puts them in opposition because they ultimately want different things and don't care about what the other person wants.
Right.
But sometimes it makes the most sense for them to work together, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yep, and even Peter Elliott in the book is totally aware of that dynamic as well. From the beginning, he's like, look, I don't care about what she wants. I don't care, but I don't care. Like,
exactly.
They're funding me. They're getting me to where I need to be. Fine.
Interesting. My second question. Interesting. My second question is: does Amy staying in the jungle work? Is that how it ends in the book? That's how it ends in the movie. Is that how it should end in the 2021 horror version of this? 3 different options for multiple, answers.
Yeah. I'm torn a bit because the whole idea of the book is that they're exploring, like, what has happened, how different are people from, the natural environment they came from. I mean, and they make it clear that is really what he's talking about. He's talking about how weird humans are, that we're so removed from our fellow animals and from nature and what we're doing to the world and yada, yada, yada. And there's this whole question along the way of like, man, this gorilla that I've been training, this gorilla doesn't even associate itself as being a gorilla anymore. This gorilla thinks it's a human. Like, as far as Amy's concerned, other gorillas are stupid. They're just dumb creatures. I'm the one that talks, and it brings up all these philosophical issues about, like, man, how does language separate us and yada, yada, yada. And in the book, yes, eventually you read in the epilogue, she does eventually go off with her own group of gorillas. But it's not, that wasn't really the plan, really. In fact, Peter never feels in the book like he's like, she's not a gorilla. She doesn't even think of herself as a gorilla. He's there for like psychological reasons to make, so she can kind of figure out like where these nightmares are coming from, that she's going to go back to her homeland and whatnot, and maybe get some. He's not trying to return her to the wild. That's not really the intention. This is more for, he thinks that he can't move forward with her until she gets over this like hurdle that she's dealing with psychologically. They're like, look, to bring an animal into a human environment has psychological consequences. So he's trying to remedy that on some level, but there's never a point where he thinks that this is really even an option. But again, yes, in the epilogue, they say that eventually she's able to communicate, and she does end up going off with other gorillas. So I don't know. I feel like I don't care.
I think the only real...
That was a long way of saying that.
The only real way to do this is that at the end, Peter goes off and lives with the gorillas, and Amy comes back and takes over his life.
I want to see a part 2. It's like, now it's a comedy. It's like, what's going to happen when this crazy gorilla has to go to a college? That sounds awesome. Yeah.
She can't go back with him. She can't go back with Peter. Because, like, if the core theme of this is greed is bad, and you look at it from her perspective, she has had no control over where she lives, how she's treated, what she does. And,
okay. Yeah.
And like, Peter is confronted with, like, wow, these people are, really selfish. Isn't that right, Amy? And Amy just looks at him being like, yeah, I want to stay here. And he's like, no, you're my pet. I don't like this. And then he learns, it's like, okay, well, I guess it's okay if I don't get absolutely everything I want. And I'll be sad, but this is important because everything that I take means that there's less for that person.
Nice. I like that. Yeah. And I feel that's kind of the way the movie handled it, sort of. Like, he was sad that she stays and everything, but I was fine with that, I guess.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad we all landed here because I was of the same mind, but I wanted to make sure it's like, it doesn't have, the happiness doesn't come from Amy coming home to be this, for lack of a better term, circus monkey that is going to talk for Elliot the whole time, right? The point is she gets to stay there. So yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Cool.
Thoughts on this pitch so far? I mean, the A24 2021 John Carpenter version sounds awesome. Byron, what do you think? What do you like? What would you change?
That's the thing, right? Is like, this movie is so firmly in the middle of the road. As long as you consider it, every single change will make an improvement. Because it's so unfocused. There's so many different characters. There's so much this, there's so much that. The two different plots that get everyone to converge don't really tie into each other. Like, Peter isn't greedy. He wants to get her back home. And so it's like the sheep amongst wolves thing, which is never really touched on. Because the actual theme of the movie is greed is bad, but so it's like having a guest star from a different fable. Little Bo Peep and the wolf with sour grapes, and it's like, this just doesn't work together. Yeah, I'm super down. I want scary things to be scary. I miss, even though I wasn't around in the 80s, I miss the kind of movies that were for kids but were threatening. They had threatening stuff in there. I think that's really important. And adding more into that around a story that's like, the scary part isn't technology, this isn't Terminator, but the scary part is what humans will do to try and protect what they consider their wealth.
Right.
No matter the age. I think that's important, where it's like, we can always rely on this bad stuff. It's consistent. And, being aware of it, that's important. That's a lesson to keep talking about.
Yeah.
So, just full support. In general, I'm one who's like, let's do more no matter what. And this is a good reason why. Like, imagine if there were 4 or 5 versions of Congo, and we could, like, really get into the differences of, like, I really like this one because of whatever angle it takes. The favorite biography I read was just, like, 200 chapters, and each chapter was a different perspective on the biography subject. So it was like having 200 people yelling at you all these different perspectives on a person, so it felt really well-rounded. And I like that kind of stuff. That's why I like the show. It's like, I think the story's pretty good. And then I present it, and people are like, hey, have you thought about adding a robot dog? And I'm like, you know what? That would help. I do want that, and I didn't even know I did. You know.
So on the subject of out there, would this make a difference? Pitch or pitch pieces. What would happen to this story if Amy was one of the gray gorillas and had been just taken at a very early age, and that's why she's so good at sign language?
Interesting.
Yeah, I have some wondering how much that would change the final conclusion, because there's already a built-in connection. And like I said in the book, she already has strong connections to all of this. She knows what these gray gorillas are. They killed her mother. There's all of this background already. So I don't really see a reason to do something like that. But yeah, okay, sure.
I mean, I'm not saying that is something that should go into the pitch. It occurred to me last night, and it was like, would that make a difference?
It definitely it makes certain plot points easier to connect, right? Like you don't have that degree of separation. However, that degree of separation might be characterization for Amy. So I could see it go either way and work.
Yeah, it's if you include that. To support it, you need to make the movie more character and personal stakes.
Which we should be doing anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And if you dedicate time to kind of what it means that she's related to these, the gray gorillas, if you're dedicating time for that, it's like, she says bad gorilla, ugly gorilla, etc., from the movie. And then, trying to communicate to her of they're you, and she's like, no.
Right.
We're not the same, that kind of a thing. So done right, I think that could be great. And I think it'd be worth exploring, but you would have to kind of restructure all of the themes to fit it. Otherwise it would just kind of feel like a shoot the dog moment. Yeah. Or
so hey, by the way.
Yeah.
By the way, gorillas were the monsters all the time.
Right. Yeah. It's like, we've all learned an important lesson. Nature should be destroyed.
Let's bulldoze Africa. No problem.
Yeah.
Glad we're all on the same
it seems to be working out pretty well right now.
Fern Gully was a torch for us to follow, and instead we went the wrong way.
Exactly. Those stupid forest sprites.
How dare they?
So what have we got here in terms of an actual concrete rescue? We have the telecommunications company find some diamonds. Their first expedition is lost. We kill the first scene. We don't know how they were lost or anything like that. They're just Karen Ross is on her way to go find them. She piggybacks off of this this gorilla research mission. They have some hijinks in Africa dealing with local governments. We have something a little bit more constrained. We're focusing on suspense. And do we have an end game? Do we have a third act reveal? We've talked about we need to have the gray gorillas. We need to see them communicating with each other, so we have something for Amy to pick up on and try to maybe broker a peace between them and the expedition party. I guess maybe that goes wrong because we're still greedy assholes and they still try to take the diamonds, and that's what the gorillas don't want. Do we need the volcano eruption at the end, or can we get by without that? Or do we just need to set that up better, like they did in the book with Ross putting in seismic charges to get a better idea of what they're looking at, and that makes the volcano unstable or something like that.
So
metaphorically it works that she destroys her own find. I mean, I like that it's a nice metaphor that she ends up destroying everything because of her greed. Right. I like it, and also I'd say that you do need, if you want to end it in the same sort of context, that the whole site's been destroyed. Either you do it with the volcano or do it with something else. Because in the book, everything's destroyed. I mean, lava comes through and just the ground tears apart and they lose everything. So there's not even an option to go back. There's not an option to go back and go fix this. It's like this is gone. You destroyed.
I just had an idea. That'll tie into why why Amy staying serves as a payoff, because you destroy this temple, this island, but the gorillas make it out. They make it out, but now their entire purpose for being doesn't exist anymore. And they're kind of standing here looking at each other going, what the fuck do we do now? And Amy stays behind and she communicates with Peter. She's like, I need to teach these gorillas how to be gorillas.
That's good.
So it's a prequel to Planet of the Apes again, right? Okay, sure. All right, let's do it. I think all the gray gorillas should combine into one giant gorilla.
A mecha gorilla.
And, got and it's
like Voltron.
Yes, exactly.
Gorillas
the
or
robot built by the company to find out where the diamonds are.
Yes.
And like, hello, other gorillas. It's me, gorilla.
I think the like modern switch out is Lava's kind of a direct we're in Act 3 thing, right? Unless that's your whole movie, Lava is like we're in Act 3 now, in case you didn't know.
Right.
I think a mine cave-in might be the more direct version of this that is not that like has the same stakes but also gives you the same outcome without it being like we're in a 90s movie right now because it's a Super Mario final level and there's lava. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
A mine cave-in for the same reason might be my alternative pitch to what Jesse was saying of like what are we amounting to at this point.
Yeah.
The only reason
the final build-up. Sorry,
I was going to say the only reason that the volcanic eruption / lava collapsing everything might work better is that if the mine just collapses, what's to stop this company from just coming back in and starting to dig a new mine? Because all those diamonds and everything are still there, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if the lava comes in like the volcano erupts and it at this point these diamonds are gone now.
That's what I liked about the volcano, because it wipes out all possible. It's like, look, this is gone. Like your site is gone. There is no digging this up. There's nothing left, and so it was. I don't have a problem with that.
However, Anaconda Blood Diamond exists as a sequel, so I would watch the sequel to this. If
you'd watch Congos,
but this S is a 2, I would watch that.
Sure.
So if you wanted the subtlety of the mine collapse, but also something that would make digging in hard, because at least within the movie, the expedition has failed, and so that works like locally,
right?
But in reading about coal mines and whatnot, poisonous gases are like a huge problem, and so maybe that would be something that they could find out during the horror segments, where like, the gray gorillas are only in the elevated parts of the mine looking down on the people,
right?
And that might have been what wiped it out in the first place, is that there's just this really poisonous gas in there that does horrific shit, like the poison gas from the rock.
Okay.
Yeah, that could work.
And the gorillas have adapted to it, perhaps?
Or that's just why they stay out of there. Like, they stay on the surface in the jungle because the fumes aren't there.
Yeah, they're the canaries in the coal mine.
Especially if they chase people that are trespassing into the gas. They're like spooking them and corralling them into these just death pits. And the people are like, thank God they're not coming down here. I wonder why. And then they kick a bone or something and they look down and there's just piles of all different kinds of animal bones. And that's when they start coughing. And
okay, yeah. That's your race against the clock then, right? Is like to get out of the poison gas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
could
or
work.
like just having to trust Amy, like needing to rely entirely on her how she used to rely entirely on Peter.
Right. Okay, yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. As we wrap to a close, Byron said he had a quick pitch for this. This might be Patreon-only content, so if you're hearing this, you paid us $1, and I appreciated that about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm what appealed to me about Congo was the schlock. I didn't know about any of the context or the nuance or anything else behind it. You know, I heard Volcano Erupts, movie's over, and I'm like, yeah, this is my kind of place. So this pitch is like, you know, we've got a smaller budget. We're going for 85 minutes of runtime. We got to go quick.
Right.
Just like full impact, heavy on the themes, minimal subtlety. And it would basically be Heart of Darkness, because Congo
Oh no.
and greed and that. And basically you have Peter and Amy brought along as a naturalist to this kind of race for Africa because somebody's discovered something incredibly valuable there. And now there's all these groups trying to get there.
Yeah.
And they have all sent teams. So that's your initial ticking clock. Amy and the naturalist are there because he was trying to go there anyway, and now he's kind of a part of this group, and he doesn't know anybody, none of them like him, they're all mercenary types. So there's no reason any of them would get along. And as they get further towards their goal, more and more people keep dying because they're relying on their equipment or their experience outside the jungle, and because they're not listening to the expert in this area. Because I'm tired of horror movies that are kind of anti-scientist.
Yeah,
totally.
So we really push hard, and it's like, it doesn't matter if you have the best equipment in the world. If you're not listening to the experts you hire, which is very common, everything is going to end very painfully. We're talking snakes, spiders, poisonous eggs, the whole deal. Everything's fucked.
hippos.
Right.
Yeah,
I like it. I like that. Yeah.
Like a Jaws hippo that follows them anytime they're on the river.
I like that. The ears are the fin.
Right,
I like
the ears are the fin, and the little spout blowing is there as like punctuation. And they come across the remains of different groups in here that have tried and didn't make it, or like they tried to take a helicopter. And, you know, you just find all this evidence of everything being really fucked, and you turn up the surrealism as they get closer and closer, you know, to the place, because everyone's falling apart. None of this is supposed to act like this. And then kind of the final confrontation, everyone's so out of their minds, they're not sure if what they're seeing is mythical or real or what, and they're attacked by these creatures. And they're really smart. Everything else they kind of could push through. But now they're actually being like corralled like the raptors in Jurassic Park.
Aha!
So now they're finally out of equipment. Their equipment now no longer even can keep them alive. And so the only person who escapes is the person who didn't want to go there for that. He wanted to take Amy to her home. And his knowledge of naturalism and her animal instincts are how they're able to work together and survive, whereas everyone else is kind of in it for themselves and the money. And that's why none of them are able to come together or even just survive. And I want it to be the kind of movie where it's okay to hate everybody.
Yeah.
I like those kinds of slasher movies. Everyone's hateable except maybe, you know, the monkey and the guy. But they're going to be kind of boring.
Sure.
On purpose. And it's going to be from their perspective, looking at all these morons that brought you in it. They don't want to be here. The jungle doesn't want them to be here. And just, you know, like, I wonder how this is going to play out. And it does. And it's going to be great.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that to start with him, to start with Peter Elliott. If you would have like let us know, like, hey, this is our guy. This is kind of the guy that we're with, but they don't introduce him. You know, they wait for a while to introduce him, and so you feel like, okay, that Karen Ross is our main character, which again in the movie she is, but yeah, that's not the feeling you get in the story that the book tells. It is definitely like, hey, Elliott's your main good guy. Him and Amy are the good guys. Like they're really, everyone else is questionable. Absolutely that. Yeah, so I'm 100% for that.
Hell yeah!
For me.
What do you think, Jesse?
No, I like it.
I like it too.
I have nothing to add. I think it was it works really well.
Right? It does. It does. I like the idea of like having that final thing. Like, by the time they hit those gray gorillas, it should be terrifying, and it should be like a thing like, yeah, where they're insane at this point. Everyone's still in the movie. They look so clean, and they're fine. You don't see anyone breaking down. No one seems out of their, like, they have seen people murdered, and they're all they're action heroes. They're all fine. They're all taking it in stride. And yeah, I want to see people dirty and filthy, and like, I want to. You want to almost feel like you smell them at the end. And by by the time they're attacked, they're like, oh, this too. Oh, and they got giant monkey paddles to kill us with. Oh, does it get any worse?
You could even.
It should be awful. It should just be a horror film.
You could work that even into the plot of like, how are they tracking us? Oh, we stink. That's how.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh, that would be it too. Gun oil has a very distinct scent.
Right.
It's completely alien to the jungle.
Sure.
Did anybody notice
sure.
on the subject of just them seeming like taking everything in stride like action movie heroes? Did anybody notice that they had Ernie Hudson specifically say, "We lost 2 porters last night," twice?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just like all of it is so like, oh yeah, so people are dying, like, huh.
Oh
That's how
well.
it
So
goes.
anyway,
And you can
what's for breakfast?
You can keep that line in there in like my patch, but it's from Peter's perspective where everyone just looks absolutely psychotic.
Right.
That's not normal, guys.
Yeah, like why are we still going through with this? You got to have the refusal of the call.
Right.
And that's what happens in the book. When the porters start dying, they're like, we need to stop. We need to turn around. We are out of our league here. I mean, there's this whole discussion where they're like, we've got to go talk to their families. I mean, we got to go deal with this now. And they, of course, they find a way around all of that, but at least they address it in the book. Like, these are people who are dying. This is terrible.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's so callous in the movie.
I'd love to have the character that's run the numbers, and they have the exact number that's acceptable losses, and that's their justification
right.
for continuing.
Totally. Karen Ross is even saying in the book, look, we've got insurance for these porters. They're going to get paid. Their families are going to get paid, so shut up about it already.
Damn, that is cold.
She's so evil. She's like so bad.
And I think the way that I'd amp up the horror while trying to keep it PG-13 is you got to show... the environment has to show off the horror.
Yeah.
So, like, in Aliens, they're in the hive, and it's like, oh, this is kind of weird. And then they see the people tied up in it, and it's like, oh.
Right.
Like, the environment has completely changed.
Yeah.
Like, if you find a helicopter that's crashed, everything needs to be fucked. Like, tiny fires, smoke, a piece of something important.
It's so clean. It's all so clean. Yeah,
except for that plane crash, which seems to have been completely overgrown with vines and had the jungle retake it in a matter of hours.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be really cool with the surrealism aspect.
I didn't even know what they were even suggesting in that scene. Like, did that just happen? Like, what are you talking about? That was like 20 years ago.
We saw the plane go down. Like, that's a thing they point out with bad CGI.
I didn't even think about that.
And I guess my last pitch would be Stalker, but
Oh,
Congo.
jeez.
Stalker, but one of the characters does ASL.
That's the guide.
I kind of like that. I'm not gonna lie. I would watch that.
I would watch it.
Just the people who make it go into the mine, and Amy just watches and kind of sits down and is sad.
Yeah,
because she knows what's going to happen.
Oh
Nice.
yeah. Make it like ambiguous and like thoughtful and ugly. It's a good plan. Byron, I love those pitches. What pitches? You didn't hear those? Well, that's because you were listening on regular streaming. You weren't
Shame
listening to
on you.
Exactly. You weren't listening to the Patreon cut where you got to hear Byron pitch on top of Ian. This is the end of the show that we're wrapping up towards. We have plugged twice already. This is the time where you can just go hard in the paint for what you do and why you love it. Let's start with Byron. What do you do and why do you love it?
Hello. I edit these videos for YouTube because I love movies and I love cooperative pitching. That's why I am a patron of this show.
You are.
And you can find me here on the 2019 Mummy episode. And then also on my blog where I write role-playing game adventure modules.
Wonderful. Jesse, you co-host a wonderful time travel podcast. What's
Thank
that
you.
all about?
Yes, I produce and co-host a podcast called Recorded Tomorrow, where we discuss the tricks and tips and pitfalls to avoid when writing time travel stories. I've published a few short stories or chapters of short stories myself on there, and we've had a number of awesome guests. Most recently, as I was mentioned before, we had Spiros Mihalakis on to talk about Bill and Ted Face the Music, and it was awesome.
It is a
That sounds
wonderful.
awesome.
It is and continues to be a wonderful show. I've been a guest at least once, I think. To
You
my
have.
memory.
You have been a guest one time. We should bring you back on. You should come on to talk about Tenet with us.
I 100% will, only to ask my stupid poop jokes, if nothing else.
Do they poop in reverse?
That's my question. What happens if you poop
I
while
know it is.
inverted?
I know it is. I had so many questions about how anything worked. Like, what are you talking about?
We're going to go back 3 days in time and not poop, I guess, is the... That was my take.
So strange.
I'm not going to pee-pee while I'm going backwards in time. Okay, I don't believe you.
Yeah. So, does light enter your eyes backwards? I've got so many questions.
It's good, but it's confusing. Ian, you are to my knowledge, double author, if not of more books. Go ahead and plug what you want to plug. This is your end of the show.
So, we talked about my books, Tripping the Field and Migration. Yeah, one is a complete ridiculous fiction. That's Tripping the Field, and then Migration is more of a very intellectual, philosophical study of our relationship with narrative. And narrative is a strong point of mine, and which leads me to what my current project is. This has been a treat to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me, because sci-fi is my first love. I love sci-fi, but I work in the paranormal. That's what I'm known for. My books all work very much along the lines of talking about consciousness, paranormal states of consciousness, lucid dreaming, out-of-body experiences, and telepathy, all that kind of stuff. I dive into all of that in my books and now in my show. I'm doing a series on YouTube now. It's called Migration. It is based on some of the concepts I laid out in the last book, also by the same name, Migration. And we talk about, all kinds of, we take paranormal activity of all different kinds and we look at it under the, how it relates to our relationship with storylines and with narratives. So I have been studying communication and language for years and years. I used to work in this field with people who had language communication difficulties for years and years. Now this is the field I work in. I believe that consciousness and our connection with storyline, we are storytelling creatures. It's why we get so excited about talking about stories. We love analyzing them, but there's even a deeper relationship that consciousness has for narrative, why we are so connected, why we are just thrilled with storylines. We've been addicted to them since language was invented. So that's my current show now. It's called Migration. I'm working on my 12th episode. It's a brand new show that I've just started kicking these out a few months ago. So, go check those out. I mean, go check out my books, but go watch my video series as well. And
Nice.
then you will have my blessings.
What is that YouTube link or name? Where can
So it's called Migration, and if you punch in my name, Ian Jaded, under YouTube, there is no other Ian Jaded who is famous working in anything, is what I can tell. So if you know my name and you punch it into YouTube, you'll find my channel, and there's only, right now, like I said, there's only a dozen episodes, and it is 1 through 12, and they kind of it's a building discussion that starts with the basics, and I bring film into these discussions as well. I talk about a lot of sci-fi films and talk about how they relate to very real situations that we're dealing with today in our modern world.
That is so cool. There will be links down in the description for sure, so if you're unsure of where to look, just click on the description below or beside or above, depending on what app you use. If you're like me and use Apple Podcasts, it's below. I think the same for Spotify. Also, I don't know exactly. Spotify's a mystery to me. It's kind of a enigma. But you can check out both of Ian's books and a link to that YouTube series, which sounds awesome. I'm going to be buying some books after this, but that's not an ad. That's just Seth saying things.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys. This has been awesome. Thank you for having me on.
100%. Would have you back again if there's another movie you'd like to discuss.
That
I'm
no problem at all.
I'm gonna nix.
No problem
I'm gonna
at all.
nix Jurassic Park 3. Don't really want to revisit that.
Good. Sounds good. That sounds fair.
I may or may not insert the Alan joke right here, but whoever's listening, you know what I did. I think this is the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Ian re-rating Congo. What a great time. I think next time we are discussing something much more horrendous than this movie. However, I can't promise the pitch will be just as well because we got a bunch of pitches here. This has been your Pitchmaster General, Seth Decker. I'm saying good night.